Hey, it's Jessie from Squeegee Ink, and welcome to the first episode of Printer's Corner. This is basically where I answer questions that I've got over social media in a little bit more depth. If you want to leave a question for us, then you can use the hashtag Printer's Corner, and I'll try and pick that up for our next episode. And we're generally going to answer 3 questions in this first video. We're going to answer about screen printing tapes, printers, especially for 24-inch rolls of film positive, which is quite a big subject, and then also separation software and whether you need a RIP. So if any of those particular questions are interesting to you, or you just need to quickly find the answer, I've time-stamped the video so you can just quickly jump and just watch the bit of the video that you find interesting. I'm going to jump straight into our first question, and that is by Neregis. They've asked, hey, nice video, and they're looking at the multicolour registering video on YouTube. Do you use some kind of special tape to block out the registration marks, or is it just a regular one? So actually, day to day in the studio, we do tend to just use the white tape. We just buy loads of it. It's just called white screen tape. We just get it from Screen Print World using the CRP5 discount code, and I think it works out about £2 a roll, but with the discount code it's slightly less than that. It's just a really good all-purpose tape, and we don't really want to use too many different ones just in process. We just hardly think about the other tapes, but this is our go-to, and we use it for blocking the mesh, the open mesh around the edge of the screen. And then afterwards, because it's on a dispenser next to the press, I tend to just use this to block out the registration marks quickly as well. However, there is a special screen printer's tape for blocking out registration marks. So there's a company called PMI Tape, and they have made screen printers tapes, and the first one that I'm showing you is called AccuRIP. So it's a mainly transparent tape. I'll just peel off a new little bit, and you can just rip it with your hands. So this transparent bit sticks on the underside of your screen and is to block out the reg marks. You want to do it on the underside so your squeegee doesn't rub over it and they eventually lift it off. But the good thing about it is that you can see through it, so that you can, say if you have just whacked the screen out of register, you would be able to see that you've done that quite quickly, because you can't see through our normal white tape. It also has this, which is like a little feature of most of their tapes, is a blue area, and that's like a low adhesive part, so that when you've got your tape on the underside of your screen, instead of like having to find the edge and scratch it off, and that can take a little while, it's kind of got the tab. You just find a little tab and then just rip it off really quickly on the underside of your mesh, and you can just, reclaim and clean and get new emulsion on the screen as quickly as possible. And all that speed in getting the screen off the press into the dip tank is something that's really important for the bigger studios in particular, and they have this kind of tape a lot. So this one is also by PMI, and it is called split tape. And you can't just rip it. You probably have to get like an extra wide dispenser on, like in your studio somewhere. We don't use it that much because we don't have one of those, but I actually do want one on my Christmas list. So it has those blue adhesive sections again, and that makes it really useful because this low adhesive tack won't leave the residue, but also this folds really, really nice and clean up the edge of your screen. So these blue bits have low adhesive, and they're not leaving any tack at all on the edge of your screen frame, which means that you don't basically have to use adhesive remover when you're reclaiming your screens. They're not getting gammy with all the ink sticking to them, and it's much, much quicker. So yeah, we actually do have our own screen tapes, which is quite funny. And a lot of new people especially, and probably some people who've been in it a few years, might still be using brown packaging tape. I actually used to use this, however I found that I was spending a lot of time cleaning it off. So the residue on here, even the low tack stuff, if you were to leave it out in the sun or something, then it kind of like melts and remelts, and then it becomes really sticky on your emulsion and the edges of your screen. And also what can happen with this is, say if you tape a certain section of your screen off, and then you're printing this area, and then you take this tape off, put it on that bit, all of that type of thing when you're trying to get the most out of your screen, especially when you're starting out. What can happen is that cleaning solutions can get in next to this adhesive and kind of like trap all the ink. And then when you take the tape off, it can actually damage your emulsion. So it's not as user-friendly as you actually think, and it's not that much cheaper than the white screen tape. Try and upgrade from that as soon as possible. Get your screen tape from a professional screen print supplier, and you'll have a much easier time, much more enjoyable time. And then there's blue tape. This is pretty hardcore. It's I hardly ever use this. It's actually quite flexible. I would use this for reinforcing the edges of a screen, like when I've stretched my own screens and I don't want to bust them, or if you've got a screen where you're not taking the emulsion off for a really long period of time and you want to block the mesh that you're not using with a really solid tape, then the blue tape is going to be the one for you. It is high adhesive. It's not really for masking off and then printing and then masking off lots and lots of times. It's more of a permanent solution. And finally, this is one that I really don't use in the studio at all because I can't really see the perfect application for it. But this is extra wide, I've forgotten what it's called, extra wide masking tape, sorry, extra wide masking tape. So it's supposed to be beneficial because it's absorbent for ink, but in my opinion, I don't really want a tape that absorbs the ink. However, if you use this in your studio, let me know the application and reason, because maybe I'm missing a trick with that one. Hopefully I've covered all your questions about tape. If there are any more, please let me know by writing the hashtag Printers Corner, and I'll get onto it in a future episode. Our second question is from Gao P, and they say, which printer is best for 24-inch width film positive printing? If you're going up to 24 inches, you're going to need a printer that takes a roll of film. So it might be that you're doing nice big graphics on t-shirts, for example, and you want all the reg marks in there as well. And printing on the roll is pretty economical. So I would say there is an Epson printer. So I only really have experience with Epson printers for film positives just because they've been bloody brilliant with me. So they do have one, and it's a T3-270, and that's the one that will hold a 24-inch. The printer that I have in the studio is a really wide format one which holds 44-inch rolls, and that's a T7-200. I think that's likely to be overkill for your studio. It's just that I print film positives for lots of different studios, artists, and some of them need huge film positives on the roll. So yeah, it might be a good idea to just go for the 24-inch one. So I want to talk to you quickly about some of the reasons why I've gone for Epson. I use it every single day and I have hardly any maintenance on it at all. Really solid printers, and they're laying down a lot of ink if you know how to control it. I actually take all the coloured inks out of the printer for when I'm printing my film positives, and I've done a whole video all about the inks that I put in there, exactly what film I use, and all the software and everything in a whole YouTube video, which you might find really helpful for figuring that out. It's just important to make sure that you're using an inkjet printer to get the best results possible, because a laser jet actually heats up the film as it's printing it. So it's fine for single colour stuff if you can build it up, but for anything where you need to register lots of different layers, you're going to find that heat has affected your films and you can't quite register them. And finally, my third question is from You Weird, and it's all about, does your Separation Studio NXT include RIP software? Can we print without RIP, and what kind is your inkjet printer? So I've already said that my inkjet printer is the T7-200, but it is important that he said inkjet there, because we're talking about producing really, really solid film positives. So if you don't know, Separation Studio NXT, or I just say NXT, is a software that printers use. So when you get artwork, you need to quickly separate it out into the different colours and layers. If you've got a multicoloured image, you can whack it in there, tell it how many screens and what halftones you think you're going to use, that type of thing. So it doesn't actually include a RIP. A RIP is the piece of software in between your printer and your computer, and that's going to be telling your printer to do things like lay down more ink, use these specific halftones, print the halftones at certain angles. And that's really important for exposing our screens, because we just want the printer to print black. No greys at all, and anything that it sees is grey, it'll quickly turn into a halftone equivalent. And the RIP softwares are really, really important, because otherwise you're going to have to spend a lot of time on Photoshop figuring out all your halftones, and you're still not going to be able to tell the printer how much ink to lay down. Or there is this other thing where on some people's printers they only have one ink cartridge filled with black. On mine I have 5, so I'm printing all of the different channels, and the RIP software is the thing that's telling all my different channels of ink to lay down from all of them. Basically treat them all like black ink cartridges, so that I'm making the most UV resistant film positives possible. So yeah, there is that YouTube video that I referred to earlier explaining all the steps and reasons why I've gone for that printer, which you might find really handy. With that question as well, like, does Separation Studio include RIP software? No, but the same people who produce both softwares are the same company, so you can buy bundles, and you can get that on solutionsforscreenprinters.com, and we've got a discount code with them, and you can use it on the bundles as well, and it'll be Squeegee is the discount code to use with them to get some money off. And can I print without a RIP? Technically you can, but then if you're doing a lot of commercial work, you're promising the customer what you've sent them as a proof, and then you're trying to translate that best you can onto what you give them on the printed shirt. So eventually you're going to just find it much more difficult to produce the high quality details, especially when it gets into halftones and colour separations, without using a RIP software. You can physically, but you're going to find it difficult and you're limiting yourself. Let me know in the comments though if you're a printer and you've managed to never use a RIP, because I'd be interested to know, because I've always used a RIP software almost from day one. So to round up, the best printer for printing film positives is the Epson T7200, and is in conjunction with a RIP software like AccuRIP.